What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions' last pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. 3 picks from the last pick in the draft. The man that said he thought he was going to go 3rd or 4th round. A player that the Detroit Lions had no hesitation. They said in their Inside the Den episode he was the top player on their board. This is Jermar Jefferson. Man, I am falling in love with this draft pick for the Detroit Lions. So much so that I literally just ordered a Jermar Jefferson shirt. So let's get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome in, everybody, to a video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, I'm not kidding. I just ordered a Jermar Jefferson shirt. It's kind of like my DeAndre Swift one, but it's short sleeve. You know how you get like the Jefferson and you get the 28? I just ordered it. I don't even know if he's going to make the team, but I don't care because I really like this draft pick. Of course, we did a breakdown video on Jermar Jefferson when we drafted him, and this one isn't meant to be a breakdown video, but I do want to talk about why I believe this will be the steal of the draft for the Detroit Lions. And he's going to make an impact on the Detroit Lions year 1, but I also think down the road as well as a Detroit Lions 7th round pick. I'll tell you why I like Jermar Jefferson in a minute, all right? We're going to go into it in a minute, but I do want to talk about why I think maybe he fell in the draft. A few reasons why. All right, first off, I think one reason that he may have fell in the draft is because of his injury in 2019. So he dealt with an ankle injury, which we'll get a little bit more into in a second. But he dealt with an injury in 2019, slowed him down. He ended up splitting carries with Pierce, who he actually kind of basically took the role from in 2018 when Pierce was down with an injury. And also because of that injury, it caused him to miss some games. He had limited snaps. It just was not a good year. And the reason that was so bad for him is because 2020 was the COVID year. You know, a lot of teams didn't play. Obviously, the season was delayed, so they only played 6 games in 2020. It was a great bounce back year when we saw him, but a lot of teams did focus on 2019, and for him, 2019 wasn't a great year. I think it's important to mention the kind of expectations there were heading into 2019. After an incredible freshman season, there were some big expectations for what he could be in 2019, and it just didn't live up to it. It took some teams off the radar, but honestly, with these reasons in mind, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day whether he fell or not, why he fell. What matters is that we got him. 4th round.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
4th round, 7th round, 12th round. Don't really matter as long as we got the dude. All right, there's many reasons you can pass a player. Scheme fit, you already have that position, you like someone better, whatever it may be. There's a lot of reasons that players can fall. Someone's got to fall, you know? Not everybody can be a day 2 pick. I think it's a really good thing for us that he did fall because the Lions had that break, remember, between round 4 and round 7. They had like 130 picks before they even could make a pick. So the fact that he fell that far and the Lions were able to grab him without letting him hit UDFA, to me, looking back, was just an amazing opportunity. Also, Oregon State, you know, sometimes those players don't get tons of attention because, well, they're not that good. I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. That's not what I meant to say. I think Oregon State, sometimes they don't get tons of attention because they haven't been that good of a team the last, you know, really for a little while, especially when Jermar Jefferson was there. But they've had some prospects that have done some incredible things. They had an edge rusher that had like 22 tackles for loss, and I think he ended up going undrafted when some people are saying this could be a mid-round pick. I can't think of the guy's name, but I think sometimes their school gets a little overlooked as well because while they're playing in a good conference, they haven't been that successful recently, and when that's the case, sometimes you do get overlooked a little bit. Another big thing that I think really hurt Jermar Jefferson's draft stock was his combine results, and this is what I want to get into right now because back when we drafted Jermar Jefferson, I did my breakdown video. One player that I brought up that he reminded me of when watching the film was Jamaal Williams. I had a lot of things that reminded me of Jamaal Williams. When I watched Jamaal Williams with the Packers versus when I watched Jermar Jefferson with Oregon State, they had very similar play styles. I was very reminded of Jamaal Williams, and I think that is my comparison for a guy like Jermar Jefferson because as I look deeper then into the numbers and not just the film, I found a lot more similarities. So let's talk about those combine results, okay? Let's get into that for a second and then we'll dive a little bit deeper. With the combine results, like I said, Jermar Jefferson's combine results won't wow you whatsoever. His relative athletic score was not very good, but the similarities between him and Jamaal Williams are pretty creepy. All right, first off, let's look at the speed results here. You talk about the 10-yard split. For a guy like Jamaal Williams, it was 1.6 seconds. For Jermar Jefferson, 1.59 seconds. 20-yard split. Jermar Jefferson, 2.7 seconds. For Jamaal Williams, 2.68 seconds. Nearly the same. And then 40-yard dash, Jamaal Williams ran a 4.59 40 compared to Jermar Jefferson's 4.640. Nearly identical speed scores in 10-yard, 20-yard, and 40-yard splits. All right, so that was the first thing. And it looks similar on film, but it shows up on the combine results as well. Now, why they're not great speed scores, one score that is pretty solid is their 10-yard splits. And I think that's a very important stat as I continue to look at that with really every position. It's a very important stat. I almost think it's more important than the 40-yard dash, because how often are you running a 40-yard dash in football? But you are running a 10-yard burst in football a ton. Article that was written in 2020 about running backs by 40-yard time, and you could see from the results that, okay, every 40-yard time has successful running backs, and they are very similar. There's not a big gap between running a faster 40 and a slower 40. How quickly you can get to 10 yards, that 10-yard split is very important. And here, it's not a bad 10-yard split for either of these running backs. Now, the 40-yard dash, the 20-yard split, those aren't that great, but the 10-yard split is okay for both of these players. But let's continue with the comparison here. Bench press reps. Jamaal Williams had 18 bench press reps compared to Jermar Jefferson's 13 bench press reps. Now, obviously, Jamaal Williams was better here, and we were hoping for a higher score from a guy like Jermar Jefferson. But in terms of size, they're very similar as well. Jamaal Williams came out of the draft at 6 foot, 212. Jermar Jefferson at 5'11", 206. Very similar in size. Also, the vertical jump, 30 inches for Jamaal Williams, 31 inches for Jermar Jefferson. Neither of those took anybody off their seat, but very similar in terms of athleticism. 3-cone drill, neither of them were very good. Their agility scores weren't very good. You look at Jermar Jefferson, it was a 7.39. Jamaal Williams, it was a 7.25. Very similar combine results from these two, but I want to dive a little bit deeper, because while I feel like their play style and their film was very similar, now I see that the combine results were also very similar. Combine numbers aren't great, but I really wanted to show that because I think it goes to show that, you know, you don't need to be a great athlete to be successful in the NFL and be a good player. It's not all about how fast you are, because there's a lot of athletes out there, but not everybody can play in the NFL. And the reason I wanted to compare it to Jamaal Williams is because Jamaal Williams has been successful in the NFL, and I know he's going to be successful with the Detroit Lions. And I just wanted to point out some similarities there, but we'll continue with that comparison in a second. But now I want to talk about these stats a little bit, because the stats to me are just so dang impressive. And if you don't find these stats impressive, I want to convince you that you should be impressed by what he did at Oregon State. So in his freshman season, 2018, he ends up being the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, because he wasn't expected to be the starter, but yet their starting running back Pierce dealt with an injury. So it's like, okay, it's your turn to shine. You got to take over. You got to be that guy. He goes well over 1,000 yards, averages 5.8 yards per carry, and he has 2 games that season well over 200 yards rushing. He actually had his career high that season. He ran for 254 yards. In his second game at Oregon State, he went for 238. Was it 238? I may be a little off on that. Rushing yards. He had an outstanding freshman season. And that's why in 2019, it was, Doak Walker watch list. We're thinking, okay, in a couple of years, this is going to be a top draft pick. Some people were thinking first round, second round, third round. What's he going to do in his second year? But his second year, like we said, it didn't go as planned because he had the ankle injury, which allowed time for Pierce to get back on the field. So he ended up basically splitting carries that year. He didn't even play in every game. And certain games that he played in, he barely played. He had 3 games where he had less than 10 carries against some of the top rushing defenses. So we really didn't even get him see him in certain games. Yet he still finished that year averaging 4.8 yards per carry. Wasn't a great season, but he still proved, hey, I was still at least effective. I didn't just lay down and have an awful year. I still was, effective. But yet, he heard the doubters. So he said, okay, let me just prove everybody wrong. But like we said, 2020 was a messed up year because of COVID. So the season was delayed. He only plays in 6 games. But guess what he does in those 6 games? In his first 4 games, he drops at least 100 yards rushing each. All right, at least 100 yards rushing. 5 of the 6 games that he plays in, he goes over 100 yards. The only game that he didn't go over 100, he had 80 rushing yards in that game. He finishes the season averaging 6.5 yards per carry, while also going over the amount of rushing yards that he had in the entire 2019 season in only 6 games. So he comes back, he's healthy, it's his time to shine once again, and that's exactly what he does. But what's so special about a guy like Jermar Jefferson is even though those combine numbers won't impress you, he's not super fast, he's still a huge home run hitter, especially in 2018. All right, he was second in the Pac-12 in 10-plus yard rushes, and he also had 11 15-plus yard rushes. He was a big hitter for Oregon State. Even though he wasn't the fastest, he was a big hitter because for him, it wasn't about, I have to be the fastest guy. It was about getting yourself in situation to get into the open field. And that's what he could do because of his outstanding vision. I'm going to go a little bit deeper than just the basic stats here because I know what you might be thinking. Well, are some of those games against, really bad teams that are just inflating his stats. So I wanted to take that out of the equation. So I took out all teams. If a team didn't have a defense that allowed 4.5 or less yards per carry, I took them out of the statistics. And I went through each season that he was with Oregon State and took a look at how he produced against what you could say is the better run defenses, okay? If it was a terrible run defense, basically we took the outliers out. So your defense had to at least 4.5 or better, or 4.5 yards or less per carry. So I took basically the outliers out, and here's what I came out with. 2018, his first year at Oregon State, with all of those taken out. We had Nevada, we had Arizona, we had Arizona State, we had Washington State, Cal, USC, Stanford, Washington, Oregon. All right, those were all the teams that were included in 2018 by those stats, allowing less than 4.5 yards per carry. In those games combined, he finished with 961 yards on 179 rushing attempts, which comes out to 5.36 yards per carry. So he averaged 5.36 yards per carry against the best rush defenses. All right, so that's basically taking out the outliers. He was that successful, 5.3 yards per carry against the top run defenses that he faced. In 2019, this was the rough year, the injury, the split carries. He averaged 3.9 yards per carry against those teams. Not a great season, but 3 of those games he had less than 10 carries. Against UCLA, he had 5 carries. Against Stanford, he only had 4 carries. And against Washington, he only had 9 carries. So it's kind of tough to judge when you only have that many carries, but we'll still throw it in. However, like I said, 2020, he heard the doubters, and he's like, hey, I'm going to prove you guys wrong. And that's what he did. All right, so in 2020, only 6 games played, so half of those games were teams that qualified: Oregon, Washington, and Arizona State. He averaged in those games 6 yards per carry. You can round it up to 6.1 yards per carry. He was fantastic in 2020 against the best run defenses. 226 yards, 133 yards, and 103 yards. So he had 76 carries for 462 yards against teams that allowed 4.5 or less yards per carry in 2020. That's how good he was in 2020. You combine all these stats, 18, 19, 20, put them all together against teams that allowed 4.5 yards per carry or less. He would have came out with 5.2 yards per carry would have been his average. He basically averaged 5.2 yards per carry, 1,688 yards against teams that averaged 4.5, that allowed 4.5 yards or less per carry. So basically, you take out, the outliers. They have to be at least a solid run defense, and he averaged 5.2 yards per carry, including the rough 2019 season. Over 6 yards per carry in 2020 when he was back and he was healthy and he wasn't a freshman. But let's go even deeper than that. The 3 teams that are, usually claimed as the 3 best teams in the Pac-12 throughout his career: Oregon, Washington, Stanford. Against Oregon in his career, he averaged 4.9 yards per carry, 96 yards per game on average. Against Washington, 5.8 yards per carry, 136 yards per game on average. And against Stanford, 5.4 yards per carry, 116 yards per game on average. Oregon State was not a top team. They won 2 games his first year. They won 5 games his second year. And I think they came back and won like 2 or 3 games in his final season, which was only a 6-game season. But they were not like some dominant team in the Pac-12. So this wasn't even that great of a team that he was a part of. Yet, he still found a way to be extremely effective in a pretty good conference in the Pac-12. That being said, they did improve with Jermar Jefferson because the year before he got there, they were 1-11. Wanted to compare this once again to guess who? Jamaal Williams, because why not? Jamaal Williams against those teams, and there was a lot of teams he faced like that at BYU. He averaged 5.86 yards per carry against teams in his final season that allowed 4.5 yards or less per carry. So that was his final year at BYU. If you look at Jermar Jefferson's final year at BYU, he averaged over 6 yards per carry. All right, so basically, again, they are comparable. This depends on how deep you want to go into the metrics. I think I'm going to stop there with the metrics and not go too far because some people do have some metrics that come out kind of crazy. Like there was a metric on college football metrics that stated that basically Jermar Jefferson had a higher score based on agility, power, speed than DeAndre Swift did. All right, it's kind of crazy. So I won't go that deep into it. There were statements saying that this guy is more of a natural runner. He's going to be more successful at the next level than Travis Etienne because he's more of a natural runner. He may not have the flashy combine numbers, but he's just a natural runner while not being the best athlete on the field. Part of Jermar's game that made me fall in love with him as the Detroit Lions draft pick to buy his shirt, and that is the film. Okay. okay? We talked about, the combine, we talked about the build, we've talked about the stats, but it's the film that really sets them apart. Now, I don't want to go extremely deep into this because I don't want this to become a film video and extremely long. I'm sure it's already going to be long, but I do want to touch on certain things, and if there's certain clips that I want to show you specifically, we'll go into them. But I want to talk about the pros and cons that I've taken from his game, because he can't rely on athleticism, and at the next level, you can't do that anyways, because everybody's fast, everybody's super talented, everybody's very athletic. There's a lot of athletic players in the NFL, okay? It's not like college where you can really separate yourself. So you have to do the little things, and this is why I believe he will be successful at the next level, all right? We talked about the scheme fit, but let's talk about the things that he does. First off, his vision. His vision is outstanding. You're not going to see this guy running into walls, running into blockers consistently. He has really good vision, and it's honestly kind of laughable sometimes how easy he can make things look. Here's a great example, 3rd and 1. He makes this so much easier than many running backs do. Usually this gets ugly, he runs into his right guard, but he doesn't predetermine where he's going with the football. Notice how he reads the linebackers, sees that they're diving inside, and he says, I'm just going to pop outside. There's no one there. Most running backs just run right into the hole and they're trying to push forward, but he's just like, I'm just going to bounce outside because you all are collapsing to the middle. What's the point? That's just outstanding. I love it. Last season, he averaged 3.67 yards after contact, which is extremely impressive. That was the 77th percentile. Put him in the top 10 of draftable running backs. He'll run through those arm and those weak tackles. If you get him low, sure, you can bring him down. But if you just throw your body at him, the guy runs extremely hard. Like I said, he's very willing to put his shoulder down, and he's going to try to run through you. He may not be the strongest guy, but he will try to run through you. And another trait that I love, which gives me Joik Bell vibes, is he's always going forward. He's always picking up consistently positive yards. He was the 4th best draftable running back at no gain / loss percentage. It was only 13% of the time that it was either no gain or a loss. Okay, like I said, if you give him a hole, he's going to find the hole, and he's always going forward. He doesn't run sideline to sideline as much as he runs north and south. That's the trait, because he knows that his strength is not speed getting to the edge, like maybe Swift may have a little bit more of that. His strength is getting upfield. So he's a north and south type of runner. He's always looking, how can I get there? And my favorite part of his game, aside from vision, has to be the patience. Man, he is so patient, it's crazy. Sometimes he gives me runs that give me Barry Sanders type of vibes. I really cannot help getting old Barry Sanders highlight vibes from a play like this. The patience is outstanding. That's what we're going to see on this play. But he really sets up things. You can see the flow of traffic is all going to the right, and he kind of puts on the brakes here. Notice his right guard, he's getting shed by the defensive lineman and then the edge rusher. So he's going to stop, not out of control at all. He puts his hand on the offensive lineman, stops, breaks back the other way. Everybody is flowing to the right side of the field. He can stop on a dime, keeps great balance, and he's able to work ahead for about 5 more yards. That just looks like a old-style Barry player. Here, I'll show it fast so you can see what I mean. Okay, he is so patient. He's almost sometimes too patient to a fault, because he won't hit the hole always with tons of speed, and sometimes that can get him caught from behind. Strength isn't getting to the outside, winning with that kind of speed in a man blocking system. A zone blocking scheme has everyone moving. You need mobile offensive linemen. And then at that point, it's about him cutting back, picking lanes, using vision, keeping that great balance. It fits everything that he does well, because the offensive line essentially is moving almost with him, because they're just picking up whoever basically is in their area who crosses their face. Different than a man blocking scheme where everybody's picking up a certain man. In that situation, you may have to rely a little bit more on your athleticism, but for him, this kind of takes some of that out of it. That's why Jamaal fits so well in this type of scheme, why he's been successful there, because Jamaal doesn't need to be extremely fast. He needs to have good vision, he needs to be willing to cut up, he needs to be willing to take some hits, and that's exactly what Jermar Jefferson is going to be able to do. So that brings you back to the scheme fit of why zone rushing scheme. That's why zone rushing scheme, because they're moving with you. Offensive line gets mobile, the running back's mobile, they can get to the outside, and then it's all about the vision, and that's when you can see patience, because he shouldn't be getting hit in the backfield on a zone rushing scheme. If you're going to hit a backfield on a zone rushing scheme, there's a problem. You missed the blitz assignment. Something went wrong. That should not be the case. You should be able to move with the running back, and then it's up to him to be able to find the hole, pick the lane, and that's where he's at his best, it seems, is on the fly, reactionary to thing, and quick thinking to be able to bounce around, find the hole extremely quick, but also not pre-diagnose, because if you're pre-diagnosing where you're going to go with the football before you snap it in a zone blocking scheme, you're going to be completely lost, because you're just going to run into offensive linemen, because you kind of have to make that decision on your own as running back. So it fits directly into his strengths. And that's a big reason why the Lions probably draft him, and a big reason why they signed a guy like Jamaal. Definitely is scheme versatile. The zone rushing scheme just is his best fit. He can do both because he is not afraid to take on that contact and run between the tackles. So he could absolutely do both. It's just the zone rushing scheme, it does bring the best out of it. Also, why you get mobile offensive linemen like Penei Sewell that can lead the way. Why when some scouts say, oh, they lack creativeness, I think they're looking at the fact that, okay, if I'm in a one-on-one situation, he may not be able to beat this guy. But using his offensive lineman, setting up blockers, putting the defender in a position. Preseason at Oregon State, between 68 and 79% of his rushing snaps were in a zone rushing scheme. This guy will not run into a wall of blockers. He's extremely patient. He sets up his blockers. He sets up the holes, and he'll bounce around a little bit in the inside, but he is a really good natural runner. And that's why people like College Football Metrics said, hey, this guy is a better natural runner than Travis Etienne. I would take him over Travis Etienne because he has that 3-down rushing potential. This is why draft nerds said that he was a second-round talent, how smart he is with the ball. And I think this goes to the whole natural rusher because he's very smart with the football in his hands. It showed me right away that he was a natural running back when he was switching the ball to his opposite hand to the sideline when he was running. That tells me he's a natural runner. That's one of those little things that a lot of runners don't do and they can get themselves into trouble. But naturally, if he's going to the left side and the ball is his right hand, he'll switch it to the left arm to make sure that it's closest out of bounds. You're taught that when you're little to do that. And he'll switch it and then he'll lower the boom. Extremely balanced, which allows him for these cutback lanes. Very balanced running back, stays on his feet really well. He also knows how to kind of make himself small, put himself sideways to kind of shimmy through little holes and, little spots in the interior of an offensive line to break out and allow himself to get to these big plays, because it's not just about speed. You got to put yourself in position to get to these big plays. You rarely see a 40-yard dash, but what you see a ton is that 10-yard split. And for him, it's about getting himself in the spot to break those. His vision was so good that he didn't have to be very fast to have tons of home run runs. One place where he has gotten some knocks is in pass protection. However, last season, according to Pro Football Focus, they gave him an 80.1 grade. He graded out extremely well above average as a pass protector. Back in 2018, he did allow 8 pressures. His only issue I see right now is staying connected as a pass blocker, but he does bring a lot of power. And again, he's very willing to take on that blitzing linebacker. Even if he knows he's going to take a big hit, just like a running back, he's going to step in the way and he's going to take it on. So it's not that he's unwilling. The issue sometimes that he does have is he'll sell out. He doesn't stay connected extremely well. And because that, he may just hit him and then fall on the ground or, get pushed out of the way. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't really do a lot of help. He only moved him off for 1 second. So for him, it's that staying connected is where he needs to improve. But he does bring a lot of strength. And sometimes you'll see this guy run over linebackers if they hit him flat-footed. As a pass catcher, the issue here is that he catches a lot with his body. But he only has 1 drop over his entire career. Because he catches passes with his body, it allows for defenders to get, pass breakups when the ball is close to his body because he allows it to get too close to him. And also it can limit his yards after the catch because the ball has to be on him. If it's away from his body, he'll have to go down and make the catch and he'll fall on the ground. Of course, in college, you can't get back up and run. So because he catches the ball with his body too often, that can become an issue. But he does have pretty reliable hands. Like I said, he only has 1 drop. And while he may not have tons of production in terms of receiving, neither did Jamaal Williams coming out of the draft. Jamaal Williams had 60 receptions in 4 years played. Jermar Jefferson has 43 receptions in 3 years. Basically, they were both on the same pace of 15 receptions this season. This wasn't a heavy passing offense to him. He didn't run a lot of deep routes. It was pretty simple. It was just leak out, and that was where you caught it. I've heard coaches were impressed by his soft hands, but like I said, his route tree was very small. I mean, there were a couple of receptions in his career where he's had like a 20-plus. I think he's had a 30-plus as well, which is his career high. But for the most part, it's basically just maybe block and leak out. That's pretty much all he would do in the passing game, and it really dropped off after his freshman season. So maybe just a change of identity offensively. That's something he's going to have to prove. But like I said, Jamaal Williams wasn't a very big part of his offense either in college. So as long as you have the skill set to catch the ball, you can probably develop into that. And of course, you have to be able to run the routes. But I think with his balance, he'll be able to do that. He doesn't have that kind of edge speed, and sometimes that can be an issue. He does understand that he doesn't have it, so he'll try not to put himself in those situations where he's racing guys to the outside. An issue that I have to know is that could be an issue is that maybe a lack of carries. I don't know, though. Because he was such a home run threat, a few carries could allow him to break it because he has that ability to break a play out of nowhere. To me, yes, he doesn't have the speed, and some people may get concerned by that, but I feel like because of how many big plays he broke, he may not need tons of carries. And I also got to say this, Anthony Lynn has proven over the course of his coaching career that if you draft him a running back, because usually everywhere Anthony Lynn's been, every single year they draft running backs, he's going to get them involved right away, even if they have a deep running back room. We saw it with the Chargers, we saw it back when he was with the Jets, the Bills. If you draft him running back, he's going to get him involved somehow, and usually they're going to be successful. Doesn't mean their entire career is going to be successful, but he's going to get them them involved in their first year. So I know he's going to get opportunities this season, especially if they don't sign a guy like Todd Gurley. Can stand a little tall. He's 5'11", so that can be a little bit tall for a running back. You'd almost want him to be a little bit shorter. So he can get a little tall, but usually it's because he's getting himself sideways because he's trying to, kind of split the defense, himself small to split through a hole. So that's when he gets himself upright, sideways. It's easy to bring him down when he's not going downhill. As I mentioned, if you have an offensive line like the Lions do that was invested this heavily, that should be top 10 at the very least, he's going to find that hole if you give it for him. He's in the right scheme fit. This is a player that knows how to play. He's a natural runner. And there's a reason I bought his shirt today, because I believe Jermar Jefferson is going to be big for the Lions. Not only this year, I think this year he has a little bit of an impact. He may not have huge numbers because you have Jamaal and DeAndre Swift who are going to be ahead of him, but I believe he'll rotate him based on Anthony Lynn's history with rookie running backs, even when they have depth. But down the road, I think this is going to be a huge part of the team. We know injuries happen. Unfortunately, they're probably going to happen. Jermar Jefferson just might get his opportunity to step up. And I feel like when he gets that opportunity, he is going to show up. He's going to show up in a big way. He's going to answer the bell. That's what Jermar Jefferson is going to do. And I feel like he did that back in college, and that's what he'll do for the Detroit Lions if he's given that opportunity to step into a role. I'm tired of seeing running backs that don't have vision, and that's my biggest focus, and he has that. And that's why he's continued to be successful at college, and why he will be successful at the next level. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out. And remember, Bo Jackson was a 7th round pick. Well, he was actually the first pick. And then the next year, he was the 7th round pick. I learned that today. Well, you learn something new every day. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Now I do. How you doing? All right.